What is going on, everybody? Welcome back in to another edition of the Fan Committee Football Podcast. I am Joe Tuman, one of your hosts, and as always, I'm joined by my esteemed co-host, Michael Herrera. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you, man?
I'm awesome. I'm hyped to get into our next division here, the AFC North. Many people have regarded it as maybe the most, contentious division in the league. Everyone's out here trying to kill each other every year. Vontez Burfict trying to decapitate Antonio Brown. The Browns doing all kinds of nonsense every year. Well, this year even more so. I didn't even mean to put it that way, but it's very accurate. So Myles Garrett's trying to hit people with helmets. This division's nuts, and it's going to be fun to talk about. Getting into it, I think we wanted to start off with the team that made the Super Bowl last season, coming off a bad season. Joe Burrow, the rookie quarterback, he tore his ACL. I don't think a lot of people pegged the Bengals as a Super Bowl team last year.
Absolutely not.
No, but nonetheless, they made it, and it was a really good game, I thought, but they wound up losing, of course, to the Rams. But I think, you tell me if you agree, I think they actually might have improved this offseason.
I think they did, actually. I think they did a great job on their offensive line. I think they really improved by signing Ted Karras and Alex Kappa, because that's huge. La'el Collins as well. That really fortifies that right side of their offensive line. The only real issue right now is that they have Jackson Carman, who needs to develop, but I think being surrounded by a bunch of solid veterans is really going to help them out.
I agree. I think when you look at this offensive line, so you pretty much named everyone that's going to start. La'el Collins coming over from the Cowboys. I think he might have, if you look at the grades and the stats he put up last year, I think he might have had his best season as a pro so far. And the Bengals bringing him over to, I think he's the left tackle. I'm not sure, but they also do Jonah Williams a lot. He's the guy you didn't mention because he's already on the team. He's really the only guy remaining from last year's offensive line that's going to be there, and they're still high on him. They're hoping he develops. So it'll be interesting to see which of those guys develops into the primary protector at left tackle for Joe Burrow. But, you mentioned Karras. He's going to be slotting into the center position coming over from the Patriots. He's with your Dolphins for a year as well. I forgot about that. How was he with Miami? Was he as good?
Ted Karras was pretty decent. I just think the problem was we couldn't lock him up to a long-term deal, but he's pretty good. I think it's a solid signing for them. So
yeah, he's a good veteran. And then Alex Kappa coming over from Tampa, I think he's developed pretty good as well. This was a team last year. Joe Burrow, despite how good the offense was, he got sacked 51 times, led the NFL, and then I looked this up, he set the NFL record for time sacked in a playoffs with 19. So the Bengals, despite their success, they really did need to upgrade the offensive line. And I think they definitely did. And you tell me what you think. I think the backfield, someone like Joe Mixon, who already had a good year last year, he could have an even better year. Joe Burrow's got more time to throw. Are you expecting this Bengals offense to maybe even get better, or do you think they're kind of just going to remain the same?
I would say not. There's only so much better they can be, because they were pretty good last year. This was an offense that was firing on all cylinders. They were going at it. But honestly, I think they're definitely going to improve. Not extremely, but they're definitely going to get a little bit better.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, especially, they're still so young. They could get even better as the years progress. I think T. Higgins is super underrated.
Yeah.
He had 1,000 yards last year on only 74 catches. I think people forget about him because of Jamar Chase, how good he is, the connection coming over from LSU with Burrow. But this team, and then Tyler Boyd as well, who's been there forever. How old do you think Tyler Boyd is, Mike?
He's 26, 28?
He's 27. Okay, so you're actually pretty dead on. I was thinking he was almost 30, if not already, but because it seems like he's been around for so long. But he's still got, I'd say 5-ish years, prime years maybe left, as a slot.
Because when was he drafted? 2016, 17, something like that?
Around there, yeah. It's been a while. He played with AJ Green when AJ Green was good still. That's how long he's been in Cinci.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And what do you think about the addition of Hayden Hurst to the team coming over from Atlanta?
It's the one thing that I don't think they upgraded, but I don't think it's a downgrade either. I think it's kind of just a lateral move. He had CJ Uzama, or whatever how you say. He was pretty decent. He was good. He was a good tight end. And Hayden Hurst, I think they're around the same level. I think Hayden Hurst might be a bit better because he's a little younger, but that's not really that's kind of just splitting hairs. But they stayed put at the tight end position, but I don't think that's a bad thing either because like tight end's not the primary focus, especially when you have like me personally, the best starting wide receivers in the NFL.
I
So
agree with that. I'm glad you brought that up. I really think, especially the tandem of Chase and Higgins, but you throw Boyd in there, you're even deeper. But
yeah,
that first combo, those first two, I think that might be the best pair of receivers in the NFL right now.
yeah.
Like, I guess some people would say Jefferson and Thielen. I don't know. Like, Thielen's a good red zone guy, but I don't think he's on T. Higgins level right now.
No, he's not. I just, Thielen's getting a bit older. I
Mhm.
think the only other duo that you could possibly, because the problem is like Justin Jefferson does a lot of the heavy lifting in that duo. So
Right.
I don't think it's fair to say they're up there because that's a lot of Justin Jefferson. Thielen's still good. Don't get me wrong. Thielen's still a great wide receiver. A lot of teams would love to have him, but like he's not T. Higgins.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's very few teams that would be able to match that caliber. Like possibly the Dolphins, but Waddle,
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, Waddle's got to prove himself though. Definitely.
although I don't think well Waddle does need to prove himself, but I think he will. Like I'm not too worried about him like
Yeah.
regressing anything like that. I think Waddle's a stud. I mean, I can't really think of anyone else who I would say even comes close to Jamar Chase and T.
I think
Higgins.
the Rams might be hoping Allen Robinson can get back to the play he was at. We'll see if that happens or not because they got so many targets. It might not happen statistically.
Yeah, I think if Odell wasn't injured and was still on the team, we could say like Odell and Cooper Cup is a pretty solid pair.
Yeah, in
And
the
then you throw
playoffs,
in
for sure. I mean, the
yeah, and you
Bengals
throw
saw
in
firsthand.
yeah, for sure. And you throw in Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson's a decent third option. So like that's not a
Yeah,
bad thing either.
yeah. The Rams are stacked, but when we talk about the Rams, they have so many options to use in the offense.
Yeah.
But getting back to Hayden Hurst, like I think the thing you mentioned, you said, oh, Hayden Hurst might be a bit better. I think the thing about Hayden Hurst is like this is kind of his prove it year because if you remember, he was taken in the first round by the Ravens to be their starting tight end, and
Yeah.
Mark Andrews just outperformed him because Mark Andrews is a top three tight end in the NFL. He just
Yeah.
sped on right past Hayden Hurst, and then Hayden Hurst gets shipped to Atlanta. He has a half decent year, even on a mediocre Falcons team in 2020. He had like 50 something catches, but then they pick Kyle Pitts. So in my eyes, Hayden Hurst, who could be a quality player, has been like usurped by two elite tight ends on both teams he's been, and now he's, in my opinion, he's the clear cut number one guy in Cincy this year on a 1 year deal. I don't know. He could have a prove it year, especially as a red zone guy. We'll have to see.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I totally agree that he could really improve. So I think, and I really like him too. Like I like Hayden Hurst. I have no disdain toward him.
Yeah.
He's a good
Yeah,
tight end.
there's no reason to dislike Hayden Hurst. He's just out there doing his job. Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
So just to finish up with the offense, I guess we can talk about Joe Burrow himself because I think Joe Burrow is an interesting player in that he had a great season last year, led the NFL in completion percentage. I feel like some people are ready to anoint him as like a top five quarterback. Others are a little more hesitant. Where would you like? What are your expectations for Joe Burrow, not only this season but going forward?
Joe Burrow. To me, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to place him up near the top. Like if you want to place him top five, go ahead. I think if you want to place him top five, he's like number five. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably how I might. We'd have to get into like quarterback rankings, but I'd probably rate him there around like number five. But I think Joe Burrow, along with like Justin Herbert, like there's some of the best like young quarterbacks in this league right now. And I think Joe Burrow really, I think it's very possible he takes that leap and becomes one of the best.
Yeah, I
So
would agree. And we mentioned all these weapons he has, so it's going to be, and I don't want to say easy for him, but he had the red carpet is rolled out, and we touched on this in our first episode, the pilot we did. We were talking about the Madden ratings, so we did get into a little quarterback rankings.
yeah,
I think I said Burrow I'd put him six right now, but Brady and Rodgers, we assume, are going to start fading out over these next couple of years. So
yeah.
over the next decade, I see no reason Joe Burrow isn't maybe even a top three quarterback, but at worst top five for a while. I think is a
No,
fair
for
way to
sure.
say.
For
And now
sure.
that he's got this improved O line, I would hope that it becomes even easier for him to get the big numbers up.
I think he will. I really do think he's gonna find a very easy time of being able to do that. He has the weapons, like you were saying, but he also has like the skills on him, like himself to get that done.
He definitely has the work ethic. I think he's proven it time and time again. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think the Bengals offense, we both agree, it's going to be pretty damn good again. Looking at the defense, this is a team's that the defense that was a big part of their improvement is that they went from one of the worst defenses to noticeably better. And looking at the team this year, what do you think of the defense? I mean, I don't think they've really made a lot of changes, but
They didn't make a lot of changes, but I feel like they didn't really need to. But I think like this is a pretty good defense as well. I think it's a pretty underrated defense. Like not necessarily like a no-name defense, but these are a lot of guys who are like underrated and they're not being appreciated for how good these guys really are. I think also like an underrated draft pick they made was Dax Hill in the first round. I know that a lot of people were like, "Oh, we have Jesse Bates." Jesse Bates, if we're being realistic, like Jesse Bates is very 50-50 on whether he's going to be with the Bengals this year. Like it's very unclear with what's happening. So I think, and regardless of that, they needed help in the secondary because if we're being honest, Eli Apple, I feel is the only real issue that Eli Apple, I know everyone was making memes about him, but like he was pretty solid in like the regular season. It was just in the playoffs where he got cooked by arguably one of the best receivers in the NFL. So there's not much you can do about that, right?
yeah, no, I would agree. Eli Apple, he isn't horrific, but he reminds me of Kevin King with Green Bay, where it's like when you look at his numbers, well, he's not half bad, but it's like, yeah, but you can't trust him in big situations because he's just not as talented as some of these receivers.
Yeah.
So, yes, he is the burnt toast memes, they speak for themselves. But I think Eli Apple he's not going to stop this team from winning, but
No.
he's also not going to help them. And
Yeah.
another draft pick they made was Cameron Taylor Britt in the second round, in addition to Dax Hill in the first round. So they were really addressing that secondary.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that's going to help. I think that's important for this team, as you mentioned.
Yeah, no, I think that right now Eli Apple is the starter. I don't see any reason why Cameron Taylor Britt and Dax Hill aren't going to slide into those starting roles coming up because Eli Apple, like, I don't know. Eli Apple's okay, but like you said, they could improve. And I think we're gonna see that. And as for the rest of the secondary, like I think this is really good secondary. Like, I mean, like you got Von Bell, you
Yeah.
got Chidobe Awuzie, who I think are two very underrated players. Mike Hilton as well as their slot corner. That was an underrated signing last year. I don't think people talked about that when they signed him over from the Steelers. And I think Mike Hilton's honestly one of the better slot corners in the NFL.
He absolutely is. I mean, he had 60 something tackles last year, and like that's a big tackles are more evident for slot corners than normal corners. And he also his passing stats, like his pass coverage stats weren't like insanely good, but he's not getting burnt to a crisp out there either. He's doing his job. And
Yeah,
Chidobe Awuzie coming over from the Cowboys, I feel like people grouped him in with the rest of Dallas's secondary that wasn't too good, but I think he proves in Cincy that he's definitely a quality corner. He had a
for
pretty good
sure.
year last year as well.
Oh yeah.
Something you mentioned Dax Hill. Something I found interesting on the depth chart on ESPN,
Yeah.
they list him as a corner, like as the
Yeah.
backup corner. Now I don't know if that's because of Jesse Bates' situation, which you hinted at. We can talk about that because they want him to sign the franchise tag. He has not signed it yet. He's currently listed on the roster page as unsigned. So perhaps ESPN just doesn't know what to do with Jesse Bates because he's on the team, but he's not. So they're not listing Dax Hill at safety. But I did find it interesting that they had him as a corner.
Yeah, the interesting as well though is that they don't have like Dax Hill. He's not like behind Jesse Bates or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was
So
weird.
to me, it seems either like you were saying, either they don't know what's happening with the Bengals, so they're kind of just slotting him wherever they can, just trying to figure that out. But what I think is also a possibility is that currently, as it stands, the Bengals really believe they're going to get Jesse Bates back. And let's assume that they do and
Mhm.
that Dax Hill are going to have him play corner. Because like Dax Hill, yeah, he's like a safety mostly, but I think he's like athletic enough that he really can't line up in coverage consistently. So I don't think that's a huge issue for them to do something like that. He can either replace Eli Apple or replace Jesse Bates, and either way it works out for them. Like either he replaces Jesse Bates because Jesse Bates is not coming back to the team, or he replaces Eli Apple because he's just better than Eli Apple when Jesse Bates comes back.
Yeah. I
So
think
either way, I think that they're kind of just trying to figure out what's happening with that.
right. They're just trying to account for all possibilities. That makes sense. Do you think Jesse Bates? I mean, it's kind of hard to make a prediction. We don't know much about the situation behind the scenes, but like, do you think he'll wind up playing for Cincy this year, or do you think they're going to trade him?
I don't know because like
Did have a
report
down like he wasn't bad last year, but he wasn't as good as 2 years ago in 2020.
Yeah, and also just the reports that have been coming out, like I don't know, like we're not anywhere close to getting a deal signed with this guy, and this is already the second year they've been doing this with Jesse Bates.
Yeah,
So, and it's very telling that he didn't want to sign the franchise tag this year. He's like, I already did it 1 year, I'm not doing it again.
right. It's kind of
So,
like the Kirk Cousins thing a while back.
yeah, and I think it's very telling. As it stands, they've made no improvements whatsoever. And like, if the organization is not going to sign him, but also at the same time, I don't necessarily totally disagree with like the Bengals organization either, because clearly asking for a lot of money. And I know Jesse Bates is really good, but also like I feel like a lot of these star players, when they want these big contracts, they don't realize there's a give and take. There's only so much money you can ask for before you become a detriment to the team.
That's what happened with my man Devontae Adams. I mean, it was, do the Packers keep this defense together, keep adding pieces, or do we give all the money to this one player and lose a lot of impact at other positions? It's exactly right. And you can argue Devontae Adams, a way superior player than a Jesse Bates in terms of a role you have to the team. But Jesse Bates is a good player. So
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
see
yeah.
how it plays out.
It's just a very complicated scenario overall, to
Right.
be honest. So
It's not football related. It's about your salary. It's about the business aspect. So it's not something we can totally accurately analyze, but it's still worth talking about because
yeah.
if he doesn't play, it's going to impact the Bengals team this year.
For sure. Yeah, it's going to impact them. But I don't know if it's going to be like detrimental. Even if Jesse Bates is gone, they can slide in Dax Hill, and I think they can make it work because I still think this is a pretty good defense. I mean, like, not to mention these linebackers are pretty good. I
We
think
need to talk about the front seven for sure.
oh yeah, I think Logan Davis, Jermaine Pratt, I think they're very underrated as linebackers. Logan Wilson's great. I do think people overblew that penalty he had in the Super Bowl. Like it was just I don't know. People overblew
Interesting.
that.
I'm a little more down on Logan Wilson.
I don't think he's terrible.
He's not terrible. It's just he had 4 interceptions last year, and I saw people. I feel like that's those stats inflated like people's opinion of him because he's kind of just out there. He's not the best in pass coverage, but he
That's
did
fair.
have 4 interceptions anyway. And then I guess that kind of sways people because it's an easy statistic to look at. But to me, like linebacker interceptions versus like corner interceptions, usually if a linebacker has 4 interceptions, it's kind of just luck. Like most of the time, I don't know. That's just my opinion.
That's fair. Cause I mean, I guess that is a good point. Logan Wilson's not exactly like the coverage guy.
Yeah.
That's more of like what Jermaine Pratt is kind of been
Right.
doing. So
Right.
like I totally get what you're saying. I think that's why they make a good tandem though. They kind of help balance each other out. Like here's the pass coverage guy, here's the run stuffer guy, and I think that's kind of like where they help each
Right.
other out. But yeah, I do get what you're saying. I do get where you're coming from.
The only concern I have with the linebackers, Akeem Davis Gaither, like I'll be honest, he I looked at his numbers. He hasn't played too much for them yet, and he's currently slotted as one of their starting outside linebackers. I can't even remember who was in his spot last year that he's taken the spot of, but uh, I don't know. We'll have to see how he plays. I'm not saying he's bad. He just hasn't played enough for me to know if he's going to be an impact guy for the defense or not.
I mean, I still think they're gonna be okay. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's just one hole. And he
Yeah,
might not be a hole. Maybe he'll develop into something good.
yeah, for sure.
But I think their strength of the defense, honestly, in my opinion, is the D line. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
Trey Hendrickson, I was worried Trey Hendrickson wasn't going to be like an impact guy for the Bengals because I thought maybe Cam Jordan was getting double teamed and he was just feasting off that. But he proved coming over in free agency that he was that guy. He had 14
yeah.
sacks last year. And, pairing him with Sam Hubbard, I think that's a really good tandem at the pass rushing position.
For sure. No, he's got that dog in him. He knows what's up. I think Trey Henderson is also really underrated as like a pass rusher because he's pretty good. I think you're right though. I think this D line is very solid. The starting four of Trey Henderson, BJ Hill, DJ Reader, and Sam Hubbard is really good. I think that's
Yeah.
a very underrated like defensive line. And especially like a guy like DJ Reader, I think really good like space eater. I think that's what really also helps Sam Hubbard, BJ Hill, and
Right.
Anderson. So I think they're really
BJ Hill
solid.
was BJ Hill surprised me last year coming over from
Yeah,
the Giants. He was getting sacks, but he's also playing the run well. And you mentioned DJ Reader because DJ Reader was the Bengals' premier free agent signing 2 seasons ago, and he got hurt his first year there. So
yeah,
people kind of forgot about him, but he made a huge difference, like you said, for the rest of those pass rushers last season with the Bengals coming over from the Texans, where he also was a really good player.
yeah, for sure. I think there's a pretty good team. I do
Yeah.
agree that like there are some weak spots, but other than that, I think this is a pretty good defense as well as a pretty good offense. Like I think this team is very well rounded overall.
Not to mention, they might have the next Adam Vinatieri at kicker at Evan McPherson. So
Evan McPherson is pretty good. I think people really overblew the whole halftime show thing. I thought it was insanely. I thought it was insane, especially when like his own coach came out and he was like, he was being disrespectful. Like he needs to be there for the team. No, he didn't. He was the kicker. Who
yeah,
cares? I don't remember who it was, but
I didn't
someone.
remember Zach Taylor saying anything about it.
It wasn't Zach Taylor.
Oh, it was like a
it was like this.
coordinator or something.
It was like the special teams coach or something like that.
Okay,
I don't know. It's just a kicker, but
yeah,
that's splitting hairs from like something from last season. But I do agree that Evan McPherson is honestly one of the best kickers right now in the NFL. I mean, the kid's consistent. He's pretty good. He's pretty young. Like he's going to be in the league for a while.
I agree. And the Bengals are going to hope that he's their kicker for a while as well. I mean, they're going to be counting on him. And we mentioned Zach Taylor. He's returned as the head coach, of course, coming off the Super Bowl. Any team that goes to the Super Bowl, you expect them to keep their staff together, and that's what they're doing. The offensive coordinator's back, defensive coordinator is back as well. So a lot of continuity for this team, as we mentioned. Well, the offensive line is really the only big thing they addressed, and that's only going to help them improve. So I guess you want to get into their schedule here and just kind of take a look at that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so they're starting out with they're home for the Steelers week 1, then they're on the road for the Cowboys and Jets, then they're home for you guys, the Dolphins. On the road for the Ravens, road for the Saints, home for Falcons, in Cleveland, home for the Panthers, in Pittsburgh, in Tennessee, home for the Chiefs, home for the Browns, in Tampa, in New England, home for the Bills, and finishing the year off, home for the Ravens. Their bye is in week 10 after the game against I believe the Steelers, or no, after the Panthers game, and then they're on the road for the Steelers in week 11. So I look at this schedule. Of course, the AFC North, as we mentioned at the beginning, always very competitive, even when certain teams are better than the other. They all seem to always beat each other most of the time. But when you look at some of these other teams they're playing, besides maybe the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Buccaneers, I really don't see a lot of huge threats to this team.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bengals are primed for an excellent season right now, and I don't know, it's pretty exciting. Like me, I'm not a Bengals fan, and I'm not gonna claim to be one, but like I like the Bengals. I think they're a fun team. I think they're a young team. They're fun. Also, I just like that their mascot's a tiger.
They just have the white uniforms. Those are
Yeah,
going to be great this year. Everything's coming out for the Bengals right now. Let's put it that way. I mean, they got superstar quarterback and receiver. They got some cool new alternate uniforms. They got a nice schedule here. They got a good defense. We did the kind of the predicting the wins for some of the other teams. I mean, I think the Bengals can beat most teams in the league. Like, I think they're that good. I mean, there's a lot of toss-ups with some of these other good teams as well as their division rivals. But, I expect them to split probably with, definitely the Ravens, I would say they probably split with. And then the Steelers could steal some games as well. Do you think the Bengals can just, like, destroy the rest of the division? Do you think it's going to be a fist fight like always?
I think that's an interesting question. I think the Steelers. I don't know. I feel like they could split with the Ravens just because like even when the Ravens like are bad and they're undermanned, still find a way. The
Yeah.
Steelers, I legitimately do feel that like this is just not a great team. They're an okay team at best right now. Like I don't like their quarterback situation is very iffy right now. Like they're either relying on Mitch Trubisky to like go back to like what he was one season under Matt Nagy,
Yeah.
or Kenny Pickett to like vastly improve. And like from what I've seen from training camp stuff, Kenny Pickett's not amazing.
Well,
Which
right
is,
now, I'm pretty sure Kenny Pickett is the third guy because Mason Rudolph is taking snaps ahead of him, I believe.
but that's also bad. Like
Yeah.
Mason Rudolph should not be ahead of Kenny Pickett. Like
I,
that
I
is
could see Mason Rudolph just getting traded for like a 7th round pick to some team that needs a backup by the end of training camp. But at the same time, I would hope Kenny Pickett surpasses him. Yeah.
I think the quarterback position is a really big one right now for them. And I think they really need to figure that out ahead of time. But
So you're in the camp that the Steelers, you don't think they can beat the Bengals?
no, I think the Bengals are just like the better team overall. Like
Yeah. I think you're right. Like I definitely think the Bengals are better.
yeah.
I just think like this division's so crazy. Now maybe they do sweep the Steelers and maybe the Browns pull a fast one on them. Now that we heard the ridiculous news that Watson will be playing in the second half of the season, which we can save all that for the Browns episode. We don't need to get into that now, but
Yeah.
maybe Watson, if he's on his game, maybe the Browns can beat the Bengals in one of those contests. So I'm going to say that the Bengals, they'll sweep one of the teams in this division, but the other two teams they'll split with. But I'm feeling like a 12-5, 13-4-esque season for this team. I think I'll say 12-5. That's my prediction.
No, for sure. I totally agree. I'm looking right now at the Vegas odds. Right now, the
Yeah.
Cincinnati Bengals are at 9.5. I'm very confident in an over for the Bengals.
9.5 is there over under?
Yeah, that's kind
Really?
of insane. Yeah.
Are the Ravens ahead of them?
I don't believe so. Baltimore. No, Baltimore's at a 9.5 as well, which I think is interesting.
Okay. Interesting. They're close. Well, I do think the Bengals are better, but I actually do think the Ravens aren't super far off.